Vamos con la siguiente, es conversaciones Forbes número 3, sé líder y vive la vida. Yo les pido por favor un aplauso muy fuerte para nuestra siguiente invitada, nuestra siguiente speaker, Ruma Bose, que está con nosotros en el Foro Forbes. Welcome, Ruma. Here you have, this is for you,
Excellent.
all yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. And I'm so sorry I can't speak in Spanish. I'm so honored to be here today to share one of my lifelong passions and struggles, fighting against a male-dominated culture to be heard and seen as a woman. Looking around this room, I don't see very many familiar faces, but I do feel familiar energy. It's amazing to me that no matter where you can be in the world, when you have a room full of talented, creative, successful, ambitious women, it's magical and it's energizing. And, oh, sorry, can you hear me? When you have a room full of creative, talented, successful, ambitious women, what happens is magical and energizing. As you all get to know each other, the support network will become a lifeline for you. So bravo, Forbes Mexico, for creating this platform for women to connect, to dialogue, and most importantly, be celebrated. My goal today is to share a little bit about my life journey and some lessons I've learned along the way, and hopefully provide you with a sliver of inspiration to think about your own lives and your own greatness. I am a Canadian from India. I'm currently living in America, and I'm married to a British husband, and I have an American son. I consider myself a global citizen. I've lived, worked, studied, and traveled to over 50 countries, which has taught me to see the world through multiple lenses, be very curious, and have a very deep care for our planet. I've had many titles throughout my journey. I've been the president and CEO of 3 different companies. I've worked as a venture capitalist. I've run a global foundation, and I've written a best-selling book. But the 3 titles that bring me the most joy and the most pain in my life are mother, daughter, and wife. I have faced a constant struggle against the expectations of what I, as a woman, could achieve. And that's even though my parents, who come from India, considered themselves to be very progressive. They educated their daughter, they exposed me to a world of opportunities, and as a result, they made me believe that I could be anything I wanted in my life. In fact, I have a very vivid memory when I was 7 years old. The Prime Minister of Canada was being sworn in, and he had the most beautiful wife. And I looked at the television screen, and I looked at my father, and I said, I want to be just like her when I grow up. And my father immediately looked at me and said, why do you aspire to be somebody's wife? You should aspire to be the Prime Minister, which was such a strong message. And I didn't have any examples of female prime ministers, so I didn't think this was possible. But I did think for a brief moment in time that my father supported my ambition in a fundamental way. But as time passed on from 7, his actions spoke louder than his words, and that message got lost. Looking back, I think my parents were very confused about what they wanted for me. On the one hand, they believed that I was smart and I was capable, yet they brought me up by giving me very mixed messages. I watched my mother dote on my brother and treat him like a prince. She cooked his favorite meals and always made sure he was fed and ready for his exams. He got away with murder. He got away without doing his chores. He never had to cook or clean. He was sent to the best schools and had the best tutors. He was their future. He was their priority, and they sacrificed everything so that he could have the things that he needed to succeed. And me? I was part of the support crew to help him succeed. I had to cook with my mom. I had to clear the table and wash the dishes while my brother usually watched TV or went out with his friends. I had to listen to all the great things my brother was doing, and I watched my parents rearrange their schedules and lives to accommodate his needs, but mine were never prioritized. I felt like a second-class citizen in my family, and as I grew older, I was no longer encouraged to be the innovator and the game changer. I was being groomed to be the only noble profession my parents had for me, motherhood. So I wanted to go to school to pursue my dreams. My parents wanted me to go to school to find a good husband. As a child, if I spoke up, I was told it was very unladylike to be argumentative and loud. If I wanted to go away to basketball camp, I was told girls don't do that. But if I put on a pretty dress, I was given a lot of attention. Being pretty was important to my mom. She spent so much time buying me these lovely pink dresses. Being pretty would get me a good husband. Being a good cook would get me a good husband. Being demure would get me a good husband. Being too smart would not. I should never make a man feel threatened by my intelligence, I was told. I like to share this story about something that happened to me in 2011. I was offered a position to be the CEO of a publicly traded company in India. I was still single at the time. As I was doing due diligence, I reached out to my family to get their opinion on my work. My family was shocked. They actually staged an intervention with my mother and then with me, saying being the CEO of a public company was not a place for a single woman, that no man would marry me. Short of disowning me, they made it very clear that this would not be accepted in our family and that I was a terrible role model for my younger cousins. At some level, I didn't care, but what I did care about was my mother. And because she was made to feel like she brought up this terrible child who could dare to dream and aim high, she would have been alienated from her family. So in the end, I didn't take the job because I didn't want to disappoint my mother, and I didn't want my mom to be rejected by her family, even though I really wanted to do this. My duty to my family came first, and to this day, I regret that decision. So parents in this room, I urge you, give positive, equal messages to your sons and your daughters. It is so important that girls believe they can grow up to be anything they want. So where did I find my inspiration, given it didn't come from my family? It's an interesting story that starts much younger in my childhood. My mom would tell me bedtime stories about this saint who lived in Calcutta. Her name was Mother Teresa. One night, I saw a homeless man going through our garbage, and I didn't understand why he wasn't home with his family. I was maybe 5 or 6 at the time. When my mother didn't give me an explanation that made sense to me, I decided to write a letter to this saint in India. And I asked her, what can I do for this homeless man? And I wrote Mother Teresa, Calcutta, India, and I sent the letter off. 2 months later, I got a response. And to my surprise, she said that poor people are beautiful people. They're not looking for our judgment or our pity. They just want love and respect like everybody else. And what I could do to help this man and anyone else in his situation is smile. And the more you smile, the more love you spread in this world. And thus began this incredible journey. And through her letters, she taught me my first, simplest, but lasting truth. Pay attention. Mother Teresa paid attention to me and made me feel heard and seen, especially through the angst of my teenage years. We all want to be heard and seen. Parents, especially fathers, Pay attention to your daughters. Listen to them and hear them. Support their hopes and their dreams. Validate them. Don't prioritize one gender over another. You have a very important role to play as parents, and your actions are equally important as your words. So pay attention to what kind of a role model you're being to your children. And husbands, support your spouses and their dreams. Help out at home. Be flexible so that both of you can work towards a collective dream. For companies, pay attention and commit to gender equality in your workplace, and not just with words. Those actions might look like having more flexibility in the workplace. We as women very often end up managing a higher workload at home and need to get home earlier than our male counterparts. Having meetings at 5 or 6 o'clock does not support that. So if you can be more flexible in the workplace and offer that to women, you'll see something transform in your organizations. For the government, according to a Catalyst survey in 1992 and a Deloitte survey in 2014 on women in the boardroom in Mexico, almost 50% of your university graduates are women. You rank 8th in the world with over 40% of your parliament seats held by women. That's amazing. Yet, women still earn 60% of men's salaries. You make up somewhere between 5 and 7% of board seats in Mexico's listed companies and represent only 15% of top management. This is less than your counterparts in Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, India, or Peru, to name a few. There's some progress, but more needs to happen to change the face of leadership in Mexico. The establishment may tell you that there are no qualified women for these roles, but we all know in this room that this is not true. There are plenty of qualified women. They need to be given a chance. Some are in senior management roles already. Others need to be given the opportunity to rise. But we need to find them, we need to celebrate them, we need to hear their stories, and they need to become our role models for both men and women. Public role models matter. I would encourage more national initiatives to promote participation of women on boards and in senior management positions in the private sector. I would encourage the government to introduce quotas for women on boards and in senior management. This progress needs to happen. My path to leadership was very interesting. I remember sitting in my college dorm room studying about how half the world lives on under $1 a day without access to basic needs. It felt very unfair to me. Feeling helpless that I couldn't do anything about it, I was inspired by a quote that Gandhi famously says, "Be the change you want to see in the world." It resonated deeply within me. So I packed my bags, I bought a plane ticket, and I headed off to Calcutta, India. And I wanted to meet the woman who was such a role model to me growing up, Mother Teresa. The most defining part of that journey, however, was really about a moment. I'd love to tell you about my first week there. When I arrived, I was asked where I'd like to volunteer, and I chose to go to a place called Prem Dan, which is a home for dying people. Mother Teresa believed that every person should die with dignity. And so our job as volunteers was really to not judge and to just love and be respectful. It seems very simple when you hear it, but it's very hard to do. And the first week that I was there was a woman who walked in. She was probably in her late 60s, early 70s. She looked as though she had never had 3 meals on any given day. She was hunchbacked, and she was probably going to live for just a few days. I was told to bathe her and feed her and give her a place to sleep. After doing that, when she lay down, I happened to have a lipstick in my pocket, and I very excitedly put the lipstick on her. And the most amazing thing happened when I took a mirror and I showed her her face. Suddenly she sat up, she smiled, and I was feeling on top of the world because I thought, wow, I made such a difference in this woman's life. But then she closed her eyes and she died. I had never experienced raw death in my life. And looking back at that time, I asked myself, from a leadership standpoint, was that the right thing to do? To put somebody who had no experience in a sink or swim situation that could have traumatized me for life and put me on the first plane back home. But instead, what happened was I found courage to walk through my fear and emerge on the other side, recognizing that I did make a difference in this woman's life, and the last breath of her life was one where she was smiling. And so the lesson I have with this is feel your fears and have the courage to walk through your fears, but know that you should always remember the humanity in the equation. I learned that there are human beings behind policies, there are human beings behind corporate downsizing, there are human beings behind every decision we make. So let's remember that. I ended up spending almost a year with Mother Teresa, and she taught me some of the biggest lessons that helped me in my life. The three that really stand out are aim as high as possible, reach for the sky, dream big, never settle, never settle, never give up on your dreams, and never think you're done. We're never done. There's always more to do. There always will be more to do. We all have a purpose in this life. And through her example, she taught me we each do our best when we help everyone around us be their best. We need to mentor each other. We need to create platforms for us to have our voices heard. We need to mentor the next generation. We need to be role models. We need to have support networks. We have to help each other. It's not an easy journey, and the odds are stacked against us. So let's go in here collectively and make a difference for all of us. What Mother Teresa achieved for me ranks among the greatest accomplishments in human history, and as far as I'm concerned, has never been replicated. Why? Because she fought the existing culture to do something she was extremely passionate about that had never been done before at scale, and she did it with such simplicity. Let me tell you her story. When Mother Teresa realized that she wanted to help the poorest of the poor, she left her order of sisters, fought the Catholic Church to start her new Sisters of Charity. In the 1940s, fighting the Catholic Church to start a new religious order was far from being easy. She recruited 12 nuns. She opened a small school in the slums of Calcutta. She spent the next 5 years expanding that school and expanding their services. In her 5th year, she scaled nationally across India, doing the same example in all the major cities. In her 11th year, she opened her first international location in Venezuela. When she died, at the time of her death, she had over 600 locations in over 100 countries with over 1 million people working with her. She raised and deployed over $1 billion in capital. She was a PR magnet. Everyone in the world knew who Mother Teresa was. There are plenty of missionaries working around the world, but she was the one person we had all heard of. And even though she's been dead for over 15 years now, the Sisters of Charity have consistently grown 10 to 15% per year, year over year. I look at this and I say, this is not spiritual greatness. This is executive excellence. And one woman with a simple vision and a loud voice, incredible tenacity, in 50 years made a dent in humanity. She trusted herself. she aimed high, she helped everyone around her be the best they could possibly be. She never settled, and she never gave up. She gave me the courage to think big, to take risks, and to do something with my life. And she did that with the example of her own life. Before I left, she called me into her room and asked me if I had any final words. My final words to her were, "Mother Teresa, would you please write a recommendation letter for law school for me?" To which she said no. And so I was confused. I don't know what the word no means. I just thought I didn't explain it to her properly. So I restated what I'd like, and she said no again. And then I got even more confused, and I said, "I'm not asking you to say that I did something I didn't. I'm just asking you to confirm that I just spent the last 8 months with you." And she sat me down and she said, "Ruma, take this experience and go do good things with it. Don't take this experience to get you there, because then it takes away the purity of the act." At 19, I had no clue what that meant. But she did teach me the lasting truth of trust yourself, that experiences like these, and we all have them, trust that what you learn from it will lead you to doing great things in your own lives. The way I trusted myself, I always say that the tasks that society assign women can be a source for business opportunities, because the first business I started was a cleaning company. And my idea was this was an industry that no one was paying attention to, where workers were not always treated very well. And my simple thesis was, when you treat people with respect and dignity, loyalty will be there and magic can happen. And so I started my first business at 27. It was called Finish Line Floors. And 3 years later, we were able to sell that company and go on to becoming a serial entrepreneur. One of the organizations that I love supporting are the Girl Scouts and the Girl Guides. And I love this organization because they start teaching girls at a very young age to have the courage to dream and the confidence to be who they are. Whether it's the Girl Scouts or whether it's any other organization, I encourage all of you to mentor young girls, to find organizations for your young daughters and your young sons to go to, so that you can start instilling confidence and courage in kids at a very young age. Last week in Canada, I launched an initiative called the Canadian Entrepreneurship Initiative. I did that because as I started studying the face of entrepreneurship and leadership in Canada, I saw something very similar that I see here in Mexico. It was all men. And I got very angry and I said, we need to change that. So we launched a campaign where we're saying, tell us the story of the incredible women in the country that we can start celebrating, and we need to change the face of leadership in Canada. So I want to leave you with these parting words. We all have the power to be the Mother Teresa of something and make a difference in the world. It starts with a simple vision. Trust yourself, aim high, be a role model, and mentor other people around you to be the best that they can be. Never settle and never think that you're done. Have courage to dream big and take risks. And in those moments of despair, remember the people who stand behind you and believe in you, and let that inspire you to believe in yourself, because that will lead you to the kind of leadership that changes industries, countries, and people. None of you are done yet. We're never done. I deeply believe you all have the ingredients for global greatness, but greatness isn't just defined by what we do in the world. It's equally defined by what we do for the world. So be the example you want for yourself. change the culture, raise your voice, mentor a woman, mentor a man, raise men to believe that women can be anything they want, raise women to believe in their own dreams, celebrate each other, fight for gender equality, be the game changers, be the innovators, change the face of leadership in Mexico. Do it for yourselves, do it for your children, and do it for the future of your country. Thank you.